Hey everyone, and welcome back. Today we're diving into some pretty spicy diplomacy.
Spicy is a good word for it.
You think so?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Okay.
I like it. I like it. So yeah, we're going to be looking at this kind of war of words.
Oh, yeah.
That's been brewing between President-elect Trump
Mm-hmm.
and Mexico's new president, Claudia Sheinbaum.
A fascinating dynamic for sure.
Right. And it all kind of kicked off. I mean, it's been building for a while, but it really kind of came to a head with Trump's proposal to rename the Gulf of Mexico.
Oh, yeah. This was a big one.
The Gulf of America.
He really likes that name, apparently.
Yeah, he said it has like a beautiful ring to it or something like that.
Yeah, beautiful ring, huh?
Right. Like, what does that even mean?
It does make you wonder about his thought process there.
For sure. For sure. But, I guess we shouldn't be surprised at this point.
I mean, he has never been one to shy away from bold pronouncements.
That's putting it mildly.
Right.
But it's not just the Gulf of Mexico. He's also talked about wanting to...
Oh, yeah. There's a whole list.
Like, bring Greenland and the Panama Canal under U.S. control.
Using military or economic pressure, no less.
Right. Like, where does he even come up with this stuff?
It's like he's trying to rewrite the map of the world.
And let's not forget about his campaign promises on immigration and tariffs.
Oh, yeah. Those are still very much on the table.
It feels like he's really trying to set the stage for a confrontation with Mexico.
It's definitely a more aggressive stance than we've seen in recent years.
So how has Sheinbaum responded to all this? I mean, she's a scientist, right?
She is indeed.
The first woman to lead Mexico.
A historic figure, for sure.
You'd think she'd have a more, measured approach.
Well, you might be surprised.
Really?
Yeah, her response to the whole Gulf of America thing was brilliant.
Okay, so spill the tea. What did she do?
So picture this Sheinbaum is giving a press conference, right? And she's standing in front of this 17th century map.
Okay.
And with this totally straight face, she proposes renaming North America Mexican America.
Wait, what?
Yeah, because apparently some old document used that term before Mexico's constitution.
No way.
And then she's like, that sounds nice, no.
Oh my God, I love her.
It was pure diplomatic shade.
Right. Like she's calling out the absurdity of the whole thing.
Exactly. She's basically saying, if you're going to play that game, so can we.
But it's also more than just a joke.
Oh, absolutely. It's a power move.
How so?
She's showing that she is not intimidated by Trump or the U.S.
That she's willing to stand up for Mexico?
And that she can play the game just as well as he can.
It's risky, though, right? I mean, picking a fight with the U.S.
It's definitely a gamble.
Especially for a new president.
But it's also a way to signal strength to her own people.
And to the rest of the world.
Exactly. She's saying Mexico's not going to be pushed around.
So is humor like a legitimate tool of diplomacy?
That's the question, isn't it?
I mean, it worked pretty well for her here.
It did get people talking, that's for sure.
But can you really use humor with someone like Trump?
Who knows with him?
He's so unpredictable.
Exactly. He might laugh it off, or he might take it as a personal insult.
Which could escalate things even further.
And then we're in uncharted territory.
It's interesting to compare Sheinbaum's approach to her predecessor.
Andrés Manuel López Obrador.
Yeah, he was able to build a surprisingly good relationship with Trump.
Despite being a leftist.
Right. And they have very different personalities.
Obrador was more pragmatic, less confrontational.
So can Sheinbaum with her more assertive style.
It remains to be seen.
Can she make it work with Trump?
It's a fascinating dynamic.
And it has implications for the entire region.
Absolutely. The stakes are high.
But one thing is clear. Sheinbaum is not afraid to push back.
And to use humor as a weapon.
It's going to be interesting to see how this plays out.
For sure. This is just the beginning.
The opening salvo in what could be a very long battle.
And we'll be here to break it all down for you.
That's right.
So stay tuned.
We'll be back with more on this developing story.
And a deeper look at the potential impact on both countries.
So buckle up, folks. This is going to be a wild ride. It's going to be interesting.
For sure. For sure. When it came to tariffs, though, she was all business.
Really?
Yeah, she basically said, if Trump goes ahead with that 25% tariff on Mexican imports.
Which is a lot.
Huge.
Yeah.
Mexico would hit back with tariffs of their own.
Ooh, a trade war.
Exactly. And she made it clear that nobody wins in a trade war.
I mean, it would be a huge blow to both economies.
Especially Mexico's.
Right, but the U.S. would feel it too.
Oh, absolutely. Especially consumers and businesses that rely on Mexican goods.
So was that it? Was that her only response?
Well, she also emphasized that Mexico wants a fair trade relationship with the U.S.
So kind of leaving the door open for negotiation.
Yeah, it's like she's drawing a line in the sand, but also saying, let's talk.
It's a delicate balance.
For sure.
But what about immigration? I mean, that's been a huge focus for Trump.
It has, and it's where things get even more interesting.
How so?
Well, while Sheinbaum has been very vocal in defending Mexico's sovereignty.
Right, standing up to Trump's rhetoric.
Exactly. Her tone on immigration has been more measured.
Really? I'm surprised.
She's acknowledged that immigration is a shared challenge.
Which is true.
And she's expressed a willingness to work with the U.S. to find solutions.
But hasn't Trump basically said he wants to seal the border?
He has, but Sheinbaum isn't just giving in.
So what's her strategy?
It seems like she's trying to find a middle ground.
What do you mean?
Well, for example, she's hinted that Mexico might be open to accepting deportees.
From other countries?
Yeah, not just Mexican citizens, but people from other countries who are being deported from the U.S.
That's interesting.
But she's also made it clear that this won't be a blank check for the U.S.
Okay, so what does that mean?
Well, she's talking about potentially setting limits on which nationalities Mexico would accept.
That makes sense.
And she's even floated the idea of asking the U.S. for financial compensation.
To help cover the costs of accepting these deportees.
Exactly.
A smart move.
It is. It shows that she's willing to cooperate, but not on Trump's terms.
She's setting boundaries.
And protecting Mexico's interests.
And then there was Trump's claim that Mexico is run by the cartels.
Oh, yeah, that was a doozy.
She didn't just let that slide, did she?
No, she did not.
What did she say?
She basically said that the Mexican people are in charge of their country, not the cartels.
It was a pretty powerful statement.
It was a direct rebuttal of Trump's narrative.
And a reaffirmation of Mexico's sovereignty.
It shows that she's not afraid to challenge Trump's rhetoric.
Even when it comes to sensitive issues like security.
Exactly. She's not backing down from anyone.
So she's tough, but she's also willing to negotiate.
It seems that way.
It's a pretty unique approach to diplomacy.
It is, and it's definitely shaking things up.
And it's not just the U.S. and Mexico that are involved.
Right?
Remember when Trump suggested making Canada the 51st state?
Oh, yeah, that was another one of his classic off-the-cuff remarks.
What did Canada say to that?
Well, Doug Ford, the premier of Ontario, he joked that Canada would be willing to buy Alaska and throw in Minnesota for good measure.
I love it.
It was the perfect response.
Right. It was funny, but it also made a point.
Exactly. It showed that Canada is not interested in becoming part of the U.S.
And that they have a sense of humor about these things.
Which is always a good thing in diplomacy.
It seems like humor is becoming an increasingly important tool in dealing with Trump.
Maybe he responds better to jokes than to serious arguments?
Or maybe it's just a way for other leaders to signal that they're not taking him too seriously.
Could be a bit of both.
Either way, it's making for some pretty entertaining diplomacy.
To say the least.
So what does all this mean for the future of U.S. Mexico relations?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Okay, so we've talked about the tension, the tough talk, but is there any hope for like a real partnership between the U.S. and Mexico?
I think there is potential, but it's going to require a shift in thinking on both sides.
So where do you see that potential? Like what areas could they actually work together on?
Well, the economy's a big one.
Right. They're already huge trading partners.
Exactly. And a strong Mexican economy is good for the U.S., too.
More jobs, more opportunity south of the border means less pressure for people to migrate north.
Precisely. And it creates a bigger market for U.S. goods and services.
So instead of tariffs, which just hurt everyone,
they could focus on strengthening trade agreements, making it easier for businesses to operate across borders.
Okay, so that's the economic side.
Sure.
What about security? I mean, that's been a major sticking point with Trump's focus on the border and the cartels.
It has, but it's also an area where cooperation is absolutely essential.
Because?
Because the threats they're facing are transnational drug trafficking, human smuggling. These are problems that neither country can solve alone.
Right. It's not like the cartels stop at the border.
Exactly. They operate on both sides, so it only makes sense to work together to combat them.
And what about the fentanyl crisis? That's hitting both countries hard.
Absolutely. That's another area where collaboration is key. Disrupting supply chains, targeting the criminal networks, providing treatment and prevention programs.
So there's a lot of potential for collaboration, but it requires trust.
A lot of trust, which has been in short supply lately.
Do you think Sheinbaum and Trump can build that trust? I mean, they seem like such different personalities.
It's a tough question, but I wouldn't rule it out.
What makes you say that?
Well, Sheinbaum has said she's willing to work with the U.S., but as an equal partner.
Not just taking orders from Trump.
Right. And there are people within the U.S. government who realize that the old approach of trying to bully Mexico just doesn't work.
So what would a more productive relationship look like?
Less talk about walls and more talk about bridges.
Literally and figuratively.
Exactly. More investment in economic development, more cooperation on security issues, a more humane approach to immigration.
It sounds like a long shot, given the current political climate.
It is, but sometimes the biggest changes come from the most unexpected places.
So what's the bottom line for our listeners? What should they be paying attention to as this unfolds?
I think the key thing to watch is whether both sides are willing to move beyond the rhetoric and engage in some good faith diplomacy.
Because the stakes are high.
Incredibly high, the decisions made in the coming months and years will shape the future of both countries and the entire region.
It's a reminder that we're all interconnected.
What happens in Mexico affects the U.S. and vice versa.
And finding common ground is the only way to solve these complex challenges.
Collaboration, not confrontation. That's the key.
Well said. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into U.S. Mexico relations.
It's been a pleasure.
It's a complex issue, but hopefully we've shed some light on the potential for both cooperation and conflict.
And hopefully we've given our listeners something to think about.
Exactly. This is just the beginning of the conversation.
So stay informed, stay engaged, and keep asking questions.
That's what it's all about. Thanks for listening.